Welcome to the Author Spotlight podcast by Morpheus Publishing, an exciting new podcast hosted by Justine Martin, CEO and founder of Morpheus Publishing, a division of Justine Martin Corporation. Justine is an accomplished author, publisher, writing coach, and illustrator. She will guide you through the captivating journey of bringing your words to the world, crafting stories that matter, tales that inspire, and books that make a difference. In each episode, Justine and Morpheus Publishing will spotlight a new author who has published an amazing book in genres such as personal development, self-help, children's picture books, and memoirs. Through the help of Morpheus Publishing, these authors have turned their dreams into reality, and now, you get to hear their stories. Join us on this journey as we explore the world of writing, publishing, and the incredible stories that come to life through the Author Spotlight podcast.
Welcome back, listeners, to Morpheus Publishing's Spotlight of the Week to our new author, Angharad Candlin. And she has written the most amazing memoir of her life called Bugger Shit, My Quest for Resilience. How are you today?
I'm good. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So we're going to jump right into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a whole list of questions about your amazing book. Now, because I'm your publisher, I've actually read this book 3 times so far, and I just love it. The more I read it, the more I delve further into your life, and wow, what a story that is on how you've overcome all those adversities and gained so much resilience. So my first question to you is the title. What motivated you to write your book title called Bugger Shit?
I know, it's great, isn't it? It's actually a story. It's a family story, and it's a family story about resilience, and it's a family story about when big things happen. So I talk about it in the book, and I share the story in the book, but I will share it here for your listeners. And so what happened was, I was about 7, and I got a phone call one day from my dad's secretary to say that my dad had missed his plane. He traveled a lot for work, and that I had to let my mum know. It was really important. And so, as 7-year-olds do, I said yes, and then went off to play and completely forgot about it. And a little bit later, I came into the kitchen, and Mum was on the phone, and my older sister was there looking very serious, and Mum was looking very serious, and my little brother was there. And we were listening to Mum on the phone, and she said, "Bugger." And then she listened some more. And then she went, "Bugger." And then she listened a bit more. And then she went, "Shit." And she looked really serious, and she hung up the phone. And we were like, "What's wrong?" And she said, "The plane that your dad was on has crashed." And we went, "Oh." And then I said, "Oh, no, Anne rang, and it hasn't crashed. He missed his flight. He wasn't on the plane." At which point we all looked at each other, and my little brother struck up and said, Bugger shit," and then looked very pleased with himself as his first 3-word sentence as a little 3-year-old. And so bugger shit stuck in our family, and we only use it for the big things, not little things. We might just say bugger for those, but in our family, bugger shit actually means this is a really big thing that's happening. So that's
a lot of big things that have happened.
A lot of big things. Yeah. Big life, big things. Yeah.
So you explain in the book that you've moved around so much during your younger years of life. How did that affect you?
Oh, look, it was tricky. It was hard. So I was born in America, and I moved to the UK, and then we moved back to America, and then we moved back to the UK, and then back to America, back to the UK, and then to Australia. And so, that is hard. It's hard for a kid to do that. And so you have to leave friends and make friends, and then leave those friends and go back to your other friends, and they've all had their lives while you've been away. But what it actually did for me was, I think it was really sowed resilience in me, and that it meant that I could make friends, and that I have been able to live in these different places and cultures and experiences, and that's all helped build a foundation of resilience. And I think the other thing that it's done for me is to hold friendships very, very preciously. So I'm still friends with those, some of the women and men now that I was friends with at school in America, and friends from exchanges as a teenager. So I hold those friendships very, very carefully, and I honor them really. And they are the ones they've done life. We've done life together, and so holding on to those friendships is a real key, I think.
Yeah, I always say that, friends are the family that you choose.
Absolutely. Yeah, they are. And we're also different. We've all had different lives and, lived in different places. But that fundamental connection is always there. So I am still friends today with my one of my friend that I made when I was 4 years old, and my other friend that I made when I was 6 years old. We're still friends. We live on other sides of the world, but they are incredibly precious to me. And in fact, it was really the book, the foundation for the book was actually born out of a conversation that I had with my friends since we were 6. And it was really about some really quite serious things that had happened to my friend from when I was 4, but also together, the big things that had happened in both of their lives. And the conversation went something like this, which was, we've all had really big, terrible things happen in our lives, and we've had really similar experiences growing up. And why is it that you have been able to come through that so resilient and so strong and connected? And I didn't have an answer for her. And so that's where the quest comes in. So my quest for resilience in answer to that question is that how did I not crumble under what has been, what has turned out to be quite a lot of significant big things that have bugger shit things that have happened in my life.
Yeah, it's such a story as well. And I know when Susie's just recently finished editing it, and she's just been blown away by it as well. And we can't wait to share your book with the world. It's going to make a huge difference. So in the book, you talk a lot about the relationship with your dad, your father. Can you give the listeners a sneak preview about your relationship?
Yeah, my dad died 9 years ago now. My dad was an academic. He was very well known. He traveled a lot for work, and he was a parent to 3 girls and a boy. And number 2 girl was this very feisty redheaded girl. And he was really raising us girls to be independent and confident and to grab life with everything. But along with that, with this very feisty second child, he had really raised me to ask questions and to push back and to not be timid. But I think he found that really difficult. And so he had this daughter who questioned him and who disagreed with him or argued with him. And his way of dealing with that was to be, it wasn't great really. And he could be violent at times. And we struggled, we really struggled. And I struggled with Dad. And I would spent a lot of time sort of growing up avoiding Dad and thinking about ways that I could escape. And then something happened, which I talk about in the book, which is that my older sister developed cancer and died prematurely. I was 20 and she was 22. And I think that really, really impacted my dad. And that was the beginning of a softening and a change in our relationship that took a long time. And it wasn't easy. So I don't want anybody to think that it was easy, but really for me, it was in understanding him as a man and me as a young woman and as a child, and being able to forgive him for those things and to make a conscious decision to forgive him. And so I actually don't talk about very often when I'm talking about the violence, and I hope I haven't spent too much time talking about it in the book, but I didn't want to sugarcoat it either, and I wanted to be really genuinely honest, because what actually happened was Dad and I, our relationship grew into an adult relationship of mutual respect and understanding and real love. And I might get a bit teary now, but Dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he had that for a long time. But it came to a point where he was dying, and it was very clear that he was dying. And so I went in to see him, and it was a real gift, that sort of those couple of months where he was in hospital and in palliative care. And what happened was, one night he made an excuse for me to stay behind when my brother and sister-in-law left. And I asked him I was like, there's something going on. And I asked him if he wanted me to pray with him. And he said yes, which I was really shocked about, because in no way did he have any faith. Yeah. And so I did. I just prayed a little prayer. And I sang a song. So I have grown up singing. And so every night from really the beginning of February until the 10th of May when he died, I went and I sang to him every night, and in hospital. And it was a beautiful time. It was just Dad and I. And on the Friday night, he died on a Sunday morning. It was Mother's Day. And on maybe it wasn't that, a couple of days prior, he had a phone call with his sister in the UK to say goodbye, which was incredibly sad. Yeah. And so he finished that call, and I hung up the phone and was just giving him a kiss goodnight to say goodbye. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Keep singing." And those were the last words that he said. And he died a few days later. He became unconscious and died a few days later. And that was really precious, from a relationship that was really very tenuous in my early years to a relationship that was so incredibly precious when he did die. It's a gift. That was a real gift.
100%. And that's shown in the book as well. And the change in the relationship that you actually had with him.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about a doctor now.
It's been a few.
There has been a few, hasn't there?
Yeah.
So your doctor originally diagnosed, and I say the word diagnosed very, very lightly here, that you had boyfriend trouble.
Yes, he did.
Rather than diagnosing you with MS. Now, that's a huge bugger shit moment in the book, and I'm absolutely gobsmacked by it, because as you know, I also have MS. So if someone had said that to me, I would have just laughed at them and slapped them probably across the face. Tell me about that moment.
Oh, that was I think I was about 23 at the time. I was about 23 at the time. And so I had what I now know was sort of grumbling MS since about the age of 16, 17. And when I was 20, I had a very big episode. And what happened over the space of a lunchtime meal with a colleague of my dad's was that my finger started to go numb. And then over the course of this lunch, it went numb up to my wrist, and then up to my elbow, and then up to my shoulder. And so I described my arm at that point in time as feeling like a leg of lamb just stuck to my shoulder. It was cold. I couldn't move it really. There was nothing, it was no sensation except it being cold. And it was like that for a few weeks. Now, I should say, my mum also has MS. And so I had told her that it was numb, and she didn't say anything about it, but, it was obviously, I could tell that she was concerned. And so I went back to the UK because Mum and Dad had moved to Australia by then, and I was still living in the UK. So I went back to the UK, and that sort of started the rounds of lots of tests and, you know, medical appointments and blah blah blah. And so in December or November-ish 1990, whenever it was, I was sitting in a neurologist's office in St George's at St George's Hospital in London, and they said, look, we really think that you've got MS. That's what our preliminary diagnosis is, but you need to have a lumbar puncture to confirm it. And also there are these brand new machines called MRI machines, and we think you should have an MRI, and that will be able to show the MS. And but because you're about to move to Australia, our suggestion is you have it done in Australia. So I moved to Sydney, and a month or so later, I had the MRI. And I went to see the neurologist, who was a registrar at the time, and I didn't know that until very recently. And he said, there are no lesions in your brain. It's not MS. And actually, I think it's boyfriend trouble. And so you should go and see a psychiatrist and, you know, be on your way, kind of thing. And now, as a 23-year-old, I was horrified by that. And I was also really angry by that. And I was frustrated, and because I had been through so many tests and nobody could pinpoint what was wrong with me. And here was I being told, you know, told off really, that it was boyfriend trouble and to just go away. Now, I should just also say that the boyfriend that I had at that time was not the same boyfriend. In fact, in 2020, I didn't actually have a boyfriend at that particular time. So I'm not entirely sure how a numb arm equals boyfriend trouble, but clearly that neurologist did think that it was. And so what that meant was that even though at that point in time there were no disease modifying therapies or things like that, I was sent off on my way. And as happens with MS, you have periods of remission and then it relapses. And so I was in remission for quite a long time. I mean, I had various bits and pieces of symptoms, but it wasn't actually until about 2010 that I obviously came out of remission and relapsed and had a lot of neurological symptoms. But because I had been told that it was boyfriend trouble and not in fact MS, I just ignored them. And if he had diagnosed me at that point in time, if he had sent me for a lumbar puncture, the lumbar puncture would have been absolutely clear. But as I've discovered later, he sent a letter to my GP that said that it didn't warrant any more investigation. And what it means is that I've missed out on about 20 years of disease modifying therapy. So it actually had a very significant impact, because had I been diagnosed, had I been followed up, when the disease modifying therapies were introduced, I could have been on them. And I may not have had the relapses that I've had.
And I think the lesson out of that is, and clearly in your book as well, that no one knows our bodies as much as we do. And if it's something that you're not happy with, get a second, third, fourth opinion.
Absolutely. And now I will. Now, as you know, now as a 50-something-year-old, I absolutely will. And I do. And I push and I make sure that I get results, because what has happened since then, I've had another MRI. Well, I've had loads of MRIs, but I had another MRI in 2017. And the results of that showed a very large part of my brain that was impacted by what my current neurologist says is old demyelination, which is in exactly the space that would impact my arm. And that is clearly from, sort of decades ago. So it was there. It was just that these were brand new MRI machines. They weren't as sensitive as the current ones were.
And they probably weren't as trained as much either.
No.
Them. There's lots of factors there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry that happened to you.
Oh, thank you.
Have you ever thought about writing your own book? Join the Morpheus Publishing Writing Group program and turn your dream into reality. Contact Morpheus Publishing today and start your journey to becoming a published author.
But while we're talking about machines, I believe there's a bit of a story with some CT machines. So
oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know how these things happen to me. Like, I really don't go looking for, disastrous situations. I'm just minding my own business
They
in my
just
life,
follow
just
you.
carrying on.
follow
Yeah,
you.
they just follow me. So I had a lot of back pain, and I was getting a cortisone injection in my lower spine. So I should also say that I have psoriatic arthritis, and that impacts the spine quite significantly. And so I was having some pain, and it had been going on for a long time. So I went and had this cortisone injection. And I should say that I know the interventional radiologist who's done previous procedures on me. I trust him implicitly. He was fantastic. So anyway, I'm ready. I'm on the table, ready to go into the CT machine. So I go in, and he marks it up. He sort of checks it out, brings me out, marks it with a felt tip pen, pushes me in again just to make sure. He pulls me out again. He puts the local anesthetic in, puts me back in again, makes sure that it's right, pulls me out again. And then he put the needle in my spine, and he put me back into the CT machine, just to make sure it was in exactly the right spot before he put in the cortisone injection. And so I'm in the CT machine. They go to press the button to pull me out, and nothing happened. And so I was stuck in a CAT scan machine with a gigantic needle stuck in my spine, not able to move. And so I'm lying there face down, and this lovely nurse came up to me, and he said, "Don't move." I was like, "Not moving, not going to move anywhere." And he goes away and comes back a couple of minutes later going, "The machine's broken. We can't get the machine to start. Don't move." Not moving anywhere. And he goes away, and he comes again. He's looking absolutely ashen. He's like, "Don't move." And I swear to God, this carried on for about 10 or 15 minutes of them trying desperately to get this machine to pull me out of the machine. And eventually they did. I think they did a, reset. And I switch it on and off again. Isn't that what they always tell us to do? They pulled me out. And so came out, and everybody was absolutely horrified. They did the injection. The nurse was so apologetic. But of course, it doesn't end there, because it's me. So I don't know how long later, maybe it was 12 months later, maybe it was less, and I needed to go and get another injection. And so I turn up again at the same hospital with the same interventional radiologist, and there was the same nurse. And he looked at me, and I think I traumatized him. He looked at me and he went, oh, you're back. It's not going to happen today. It won't happen today. And I was like, I'm sure it won't happen today. And it didn't. So I go in, they ready for the whole rigmarole. They put me into the machine. And then while I'm in the machine, every single alarm that could go just went off. This cacophony of sound, and everybody disappeared. I'm like, hello, I'm stuck in a CT machine again. Hello. And eventually they came back about another 10 minutes later, and he came up to me and he went, "I am so sorry. I cannot believe that just happened." I went, "What happened?" And he said, "Oh, somebody coded. So somebody had a heart attack, and our protocol is that everybody goes to help." And so they left me stuck in a CT machine again. Like, who would have thought it? Twice.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. It is.
I know.
Only you, and it only you. But the full descriptive, and there's so many more stories like that.
Physical comedy is a gift, I think, and it's a gift that I have been bestowed with. So,
and you can read all about that.
You can.
In the book. So,
and many more. There are so many more.
There are. Your mum is an incredibly strong, no nonsense, well-educated woman, but you write later in life that your mum presented to the outside world as a lovely little frail old granny, and this could not be further from the truth, could it?
No, it couldn't. Mum was always, she was a difficult mum. She was she could be quite mean, so I described her as quite a mean mum. She had MS, and her MS really was everything in our family circuited around mum's MS. And so there was no room for anybody else to be unwell or to be ill. And in fact, when I told her that I had MS, her response was words to the effect of that she had it was worse for her. It wasn't worse, it was just different. We both got MS. And I've had it for a very long time. I've had MS for about 40 years. But as she aged, she became actually more difficult and more mean and challenging. And after Dad died, my sister and I and my mum built a house so we could all live together, because my sister's husband had also died. And so we built a house, and mum's behavior became more and more aggressive and very difficult to manage. And so she was physically aggressive, she was very verbally aggressive, and I actually can't find the words to describe how aggressive she was in her language and in the words that she said. And there was this one moment where we had community nurses were involved to help Mum. And I went out to the community nurse's car to pick up some Sharps containers for Mum's insulin needles. And she said, "I want you to know, I see it and I know. And you and your sister are doing really well." And I was so surprised by that, and I said, "This is a good day, nothing compared to what we've," and she said, "Yeah, I know, but I can see it." And what she was talking about was dementia. And, really that had taken hold. And that has been I hate to use the J word, the journey that we have had for the last few years. And Mum's now in a nursing home because she needs 24-hour care. And thankfully that was not a decision that my sister and I made. Actually, the doctors made that decision for us, and they said she can't come home. And it's hard. That's hard for my sister and I, because in our humanity, we see Mum just as another human. And this is really hard, and we wouldn't want anybody to go through it. But it is challenging because we grew up with a mum who was quite mean and not particularly sympathetic at all, and sort of told us to get on with it. Some would say that's abusive. And then she developed even more into this sort of aggressive person. And yet, as her daughters, we're caring for her. Even though she's not living at home, we're still caring for her. And that is an incredible challenge to do. And so, that really took resilience to be able to do that. Like, it would have been very easy to put her in a nursing home and just forget about her.
Yeah.
But I can't do that. And neither can my sister. We can't do that
mum.
She's our mum, and she's a human. She's a woman who is in a very difficult, it's awful. Dementia is awful, as your listeners and readers of my book who have walked the walk of dementia will know how hard it is. It is incredible.
And that dementia was brought on by the MS, is that?
It was. So it's MS related dementia. Yeah.
And we've spoken about this because, my mum had MS, and it wasn't until I was reading through your book, it's like, this explains her behaviour as well. And I strongly believe that she had MS dementia as well. So not only is your book your story of your life, it's very educational for reading it as well. And I personally thank you for that, because that really explained a lot on my childhood and right up until my mum's passing from.
And I think I want to just go back to what I said about Dad. And I said, that one of the significant things was that I needed to forgive Dad. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the word forgiveness. And I think a lot of people think that to forgive somebody means that you forgive and you forget and you just get on with things. And that's not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness is about being able to lay it down and say, this happened to me, and I'm honoring that this happened to me, but I will not allow the power of that experience to influence my life, and I make a choice to leave it there. And it was hard. I don't want to think for anybody to think that it was easy for me to do. I had to do it time and time again. And but essentially it was saying, I do not want this to shape me. I do not want this to turn into bitterness. I do not want this to influence the person that I am. And I try very hard to be kind and to have integrity. And it would have been very easy to become very bitter. And so I chose to forgive my dad. I didn't speak to my dad about it. It wasn't about my dad. It was about me. Yeah. And I really struggled around my mum, because there wasn't a moment with my mum where like with dad, I had some very, very wise counsel around dad and that forgiveness. And I didn't have that around mum. And I didn't have those very specific conversations about mum. And so when I was writing the chapter about mum, it was a very difficult chapter to write. It was actually the first chapter that I wrote. And I realized as I came to the end of the chapter that actually, in fact, I think I have forgiven mum, because I've been able to lay it down. I've been able to have a relationship with this woman who has dementia and has been cruel at times, but not allow that to influence my care of her as a mum, and that actually I can see her as a complex human being. There are many complexities in us humans, and with my mum as well. And so even though I didn't overtly forgive her, I think I've got to that point where I actually have essentially forgiven her.
Writing this book has made you think about your relationship with your mum, and
yeah.
And I know writing a memoir can be very cathartic as well. Do you think that has had an impression on you?
Yeah, it was a very interesting process writing this book, because the book basically took me about 6 weeks to write.
I know. Let's stop for 2 seconds. The book is around about 86,000 words, and you wrote that in 6 weeks.
I did. Yes.
I've been writing mine for 4 years. You've written yours in 6 weeks. So you actually have spurred me on to finish.
No, good. Yeah, I mean, I have written a lot for my work, so I am used to writing, but because I've got MS, writing and typing is actually quite tricky. However, I found a new keyboard that was, really great. And I didn't write 24/7. I wrote for a couple of hours a day, and I went to cafes and sat overlooking the beach, and I wrote, and I did it while we were on holiday by the pool and things like that.
I know, so it wasn't sent me the photos.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. And
no, you're not.
Yeah, no, I'm not. But I wanted to get it down. And so one of the ways that I have always worked, and colleagues and friends will tell you this, is that I mull things over for a long time, and I let it churn away in the back of my brain and my mind, and then suddenly it starts to write itself. And that's what happened with this. It was New Year's Eve. My plans had been scuppered for New Year's Eve, and suddenly it was time. And so actually that's what's happened with my next book too, is that it started to write itself. So it's ready. It's ready.
That's right. Listeners, she's already got another book ready to go. You've actually got 3 more to go.
Yes, I have. I've started one, but actually book number 3 has overtaken book number 2 in terms of its readiness to be written, partly because, well, mostly because actually it started to be written in my head, but also it's going to be based on somebody else's story, and it's about domestic violence, which is a very difficult subject to write, and I am writing somebody else's story, and she's ready for her story to be written, and so I need to honor that, and I need to move on it. Well, now that she's in a position to collaborate on this book, because I want to honor that story and her experience in the best way I possibly can. But we've we've strayed away from what we were talking about, and now my MS brain means that I can't actually remember what the question
That's
was.
right. I'm gonna ask you another question anyway,
Okay.
because my
All right.
MS brain won't allow me to go
Yeah.
back and remember what it was as
Yeah.
well.
Are you loving the podcast so far? Imagine the possibilities if you had Justine Martin guiding you through your writing journey. Whether you're crafting your next big book or perfecting a personal project, Justine's expertise can elevate your work. Don't miss out on the chance to work with a seasoned pro, ready to take your writing to the next level. Message us today and let's make your writing dreams come true.
Your passion and drive for justice through this book has been extraordinary to read about.
Yeah.
I don't want to give too much more away. I want people to read it, so I'm really, really conscious about it. I mean, I could ask you about Ruby, but people are going to have to read the book about Ruby. We could go through about the emotional read it is about your sister's passing, but I think that one needs to be honoured by reading as well. And you've got a really special painting called I'm Flying, and it's very significant to you, but that's something else that they can read throughout the book. But finally, you started out writing this book as a quest to find out what made you resilient. What did you discover?
Well, I discovered a lot of things. We talk about resilience a lot. So what your listeners won't know is that I'm a psychologist. Well, I'm a retired psychologist, and we talk about resilience a lot. And so the motivation was that conversation, my quest for resilience, but also I really wanted to help other people understand resilience and to have the information to be able to build their own resilience. And so really, I suppose I got to the end of the book and I had reflected on it. I've just remembered the question that you asked earlier, which I didn't answer, which was about mum and just about writing the bit about mum. So I will just add, and then we'll come back to this other question. What was really interesting about reflecting on mum was my sister and I were going through mum and dad's stuff, all of their 50 years of marriage, all of their stuff. And that enabled me to see mum as a young woman, as a teenager, falling in love with my dad and him falling in love with her, and as new parents and as, parents to toddlers and the busyness of life. And so that was really important for me to be able to see that. And that is what helped me reflect, I think, and write it. But going back to this question about the quest, there are some things in life we choose. We can choose to be resilient. I know this may sound very difficult for readers, but at any point in my life, with the things that have happened to me, I could have chosen to go under. I could have hidden under the doona or the duvet for anybody who's in England.
Or blanket anywhere else.
Yeah. I could have chosen to fall. I could have chosen, but there is within me, I am the daughter of Welsh miners, and so there is a stubbornness within me. My dad raised stubborn, strong girls, and so I had that. And so I chose every time. I could have sunk, but I chose to fly. But also I was able to choose to fly because I had brilliant people around me. I had amazing friends, but I worked in the sector, which meant that I have got long friendships with colleagues, and we were able to talk things through and to be supported by people, because you can't do it on your own. You absolutely can't do it on your own. And so you choose to put people around you. So this is another choice that you can make. So resilience isn't about you either have it or you don't have it, or it's fate. You actually can make some choices around it. So I chose to put people around me who were able to support me at times when it was almost impossible to keep going. And they held my hands up, and I've said this to them, personally, that they held my hands up when I couldn't do it myself, and they got me through it, and I looked after myself, And so I made sure, again, probably because of work, because I understand vicarious trauma, that I made sure that I looked after myself. And so those were things with facials and massages, but I also raced yachts for about 15 years. And that was really important to do. And I have faith. And, you know, I also have an incredibly wicked sense of humor. And I think that comes from my Welsh grandfather.
And it comes through the book as well.
Yeah. And so I'm able to see the funny side of things. And honestly, when I've shared stories about me falling over or pickles that I've got into, I genuinely think they're hilarious. And so I'm able to laugh at myself. I don't take myself too seriously. But the other thing, when I think about my two friends in the UK and me, so I had lots of people around me who were fantastic. But I have a system. We have a system in Australia that works. Not everything works, and I don't want to be Pollyanna about the things in our social services and our health system that don't work. But I live in Sydney, and so I have access to mental health support if I need it. I have access to good doctors once you find your way through some of the bad ones, you know, and you find the really good ones. I've got an amazing medical team who support me. I have access to education. And it's a very privileged position to be in, and I do not take that for granted. I feel very humble that I have got such privilege, because a lot of people don't. But it's not just about that. It's about, like, I grew up in the north of England, which is not privileged in any way, shape, or form. But what I think, in terms of that, we had Jackie. I'm going to cry. So my friends and I were lucky enough to have Jackie, who was our English teacher. And she was one of the people who, and she still is in my life. And in fact, she wrote the foreword for the book and she edited it. And I am so incredibly grateful for Jackie, because what Jackie did, and this is not about privilege, this is just about, I mean, I do feel privileged for her to be in my life, but this is not about education or wealth or anything like that. But we had a teacher at school who believed in us and who challenged us. And she let us see a future that we couldn't have seen without her. And she believed in me. She believed that I could go to university and study psychology. She believed in me that I could do great things.
And you have.
And I have. And
the
so
lives that you have changed, the impact that you've changed. And I mean, you'll read about that in the book as well. And the lives that this book, Bugger Shit, will change.
Yeah.
Is huge. And I'm trying not to get teary now as well. I'm so privileged and humbled that Morpheus Publishing has put this together. And our relationship, we stumbled across by chance.
Yeah.
I compiled another book, Whispers of Resilience, last year, our stories of multiple sclerosis, and you contributed a chapter from that. And from that, I asked anyone who wanted to continue writing, and you put your hand up. So I'm grateful that you came into my life. And
thank you.
And
the feeling's very mutual.
Just reading this book, it's amazing. So if you're out there in listening land, watching us on YouTube or wherever it is that you're seeing this episode, get yourself a copy. It's available on Amazon, Kindle Reader. You can go on some websites, which will be in the show notes, on where you can actually purchase it as well. Harry, as I call you, is also a keynote speaker, so she's available for any conferences that you may have, and where you want someone who's inspiring, motivational, to tell their story. So any final words, my friend?
What I want to say is that we all is to have a village. We cannot do life alone. And choose your people. And your people, if you are, my people came to me and I found my people, And I committed to my people and my village, and really, I think we can all do that. We can commit to the people who are in our lives. And I think if you are, what I really wanted to do was to whisper to those people who are struggling, is to say that I believe in you, even though we may never meet, and that you are precious and that you are worthwhile. And so I really wanted the people who have no voice and who are stuck to be able to read this book and see that things are possible. Like, I mean, really, you have to read the book and you at some point you will, I'm sure, read the book. And I'm sure you had this experience as well, Justine, where you went, I cannot believe the things that have gone wrong in this person's life. Like, seriously, can all of this go wrong? What I want to say is that you absolutely not just survive, you can thrive through this. And, you know, I had to medically retire prematurely from work last year, and I loved and adored the work that I did in the community. And I worked with the bravest people in the whole entire world. I am so thankful for the clients who have come across my path over, you know, the 30 years that I've worked in it. But there are people around who will support you. And I wanted you to read the book. I wanted you to be able to laugh, but also to think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
And that you are precious.
100%. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for, now I'm emotional.
Yeah.
Thank you for all those wise words and penning this book. It's an absolute privilege to have you on today. So remember, grab your copy, whether it's the paperback or it's the Kindle version, and go through the journey of this amazing woman. So until our next author spotlight, happy reading, everyone.
Thanks, Justine.
Thank you for tuning in to the Author Spotlight podcast by Morpheus Publishing. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration for your own writing journey. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to our podcast for more exciting content and author insights. Stay connected with us on social media at Morpheus Publishing and visit our website at www.morpheuspublishing.com.au to discover how we can help you bring your book dreams to life. Remember, don't wait. Take the first step now and turn your dreams into reality. See you next time.